This is Access Ann Arbor.
My name is Elaine Rumman. I am a citizen of the United States, originally from Palestine, but I consider myself a citizen of the world. I am interested in interviewing thoughtful people who contributed from themselves to better society. It is my pleasure to introduce to you today Dr. Seikaly, whom I have known for over 30 years, and mainly through our common interest and from her activities and concerns. I have come to know Dr. Seikaly as a highly respected and respectful colleague who has contributed from her heart and commitment to education, to community development, and to the cause of justice. For every 20 years as a professor at Wayne State University, she has served our young students and giving them her knowledge, wisdom, and example. Also as a researcher and author, Dr. Seikaly has been a pioneer with her work on Palestinian oral history. We hope today to hear more about her work and achievements. Thank you, Dr. Seikaly, for being here with us today. And please tell us briefly about your childhood. Where were you born also?
Well, first, thank you very much for having this program and being its host and inviting me.
You're welcome.
I am very happy to do this. I am a Palestinian too. I was born in Palestine. I was born in Nazareth.
In Nazareth?
Yeah, but my family is from Haifa. I was born before 1948. Therefore, in 1948, like 750,000 Palestinians, we were immigrants during the Nakba events of 1948, where we left our homes and went first of all, we went to the Arab world, and this is where I spent the first part of my life and my education. I was educated in the West Bank, in Jordan, in Lebanon. This is the early education. But it should be noted that as a Palestinian, my early childhood was affected by the fact that I'm a Palestinian, by the fact that I was a refugee, by the fact that my parents had to really struggle in order to give my family, I have 3 brothers and a sister, a living way. And therefore, from childhood, I was aware of the fact of my identity. It is not anything that came late in life. My education was basically involved with this identity. I'm a historian, I'm a social historian.
Wow.
And my family itself, from early on, as this book will show, this is lineage, the story, the Seikalys in the Americas. So my family came to the United States as early as 1912.
Wow.
And
so you are from the pioneer who came to this country?
well, no. My family, there were members of the family who came in the 1850s. My family came in the 1910. My grandfather came 1912 with my father, my aunt, and as the pictures will show, our house is still there in Haifa, the house where we left, but the picture of my grandparents and all my father and his siblings was in 1910.
And you can't take it, you can't live there anymore?
No, it's not our house. We had been expelled from that. And in fact, our house, because it was one of the earliest built, it has become a model, and it is being renovated to show some of the models of the earliest Palestinian housing. It is on Jaffa Street, which was at that time close to the sea. But my family has been in the States also very long. My own grandfather, Elaine Seikaly, is buried in Syracuse, New York.
Even that.
Yeah, he died 1915, 1916. I'm not sure which date, and is buried out there. So we have links to America, and very old links. And I feel very much, we are very much Americans, but I am also a Palestinian because of my commitment to this cause, to the issue of justice. I can't give up my commitment, which has become a very much also an academic commitment. It's not only to Palestine. Justice is for all people.
Exactly.
And my commitment is to all humanity. And therefore, from this, the lesson is to go further than only that.
Did you also studied here in the United States?
Well, I studied much later in the United States. My first education was in Lebanon, in the American universities in Beirut.
American University considered the highest
yeah, I had a first
university.
Degree. I had a first degree there, and then I came to United States in 1970. This is how long I personally have been in the United States, from 1970 to today. Even though many people still ask me, you have an accent. I don't know what kind of accent I have, but basically it is made up from all the history. I have had my first degree from Beirut, my master's degree from UCLA in California, and my PhD from Oxford, where
you are highly, highly
not
educated.
really. I mean, now there are so many young people in the Arab world who are getting educated, Elaine. It's become very important. And I remember very well that my father used to say, Palestine has taught us that we can't give you things except what you keep in yourself. Education is what you will always have, that nobody can take away from you.
Exactly. With your knowledge and interest, did you write any books?
Of course, I did write a lot. I mean, and particularly, I wrote my first very important thesis. My PhD thesis was on Haifa, which I turned it into a book. I changed it, I elongated it, but it is the history of the Palestinian community of Haifa. And in that book, I give a proper explanation why this community had to really contend with certain issues of British Zionist impact, and which at the very end has, I can see it, and it explains some of the seriousness of why the community was dispersed. That book was published by I.B. Torres in 1995.
95. Is it in the library here?
Yeah, it's everywhere.
Okay,
And
that's great.
I.B. Torres is a British publisher, but something else very important, that it is in its second edition, and it was translated into Arabic by the Institute of Palestine Studies in Beirut.
Great.
In a series on cities, Palestinian cities. And it has become very well known. I have had quite a lot of people quoting it and using it. But that's not my only publication. Because of my interest in the Palestinian cause, it really involved me into oral history.
It's in your heart, in your mind.
But it also made me understand that without oral history, without taking the narrative from the people, you don't have the whole story.
Not really. That's
You see,
true.
when I was doing my work for my first book, I went into the archives, and I discovered that many of the archives, which are supposedly standard written, are really not the whole true story. It's not the story that my parents told me, that the people in the street know. Therefore, I did get more involved in oral history, which I do extensively on the Palestinians through my life. I've studied Palestinians and all the destroyed villages. I did quite a lot of study on that. I also, because I am concerned about justice, I moved oral history where I study also women. I've done quite a lot of study on women of the Gulf using oral history. And I have a collection of data on that too.
And when did you start working a professor at University of Michigan, at Wayne State University?
Yeah, well, I did work before also at University of Bahrain, but at Wayne State University in 1995. Since then, I've been there, which is over 20 years, and I've had a whole spectrum of students, which I love. I am very, very concerned with youth, with how our students get this. And this is really, for me, the satisfaction of my life. It's what you give of yourself and how the students acquire this knowledge through the model, through the understanding, and they teach you as much as you teach them. And this is what is the meaning of education.
Like a mother, parents are parents are the first mother, and professors are the first teachers to put in their mind the education, the true education.
For me, I try my best, and I hope I had succeeded. To tell you the truth, from the reaction of my students, I am very satisfied. I feel very happy, I feel gratified, and I feel that I have done my mission. And now I am in a stage of slow retirement, so I go backward and look at that, and I enjoy, I reap from what my students do. One of my students used even the oral history in order to do her own PhD, which is very satisfactory.
Wow, I am so...
Yeah.
And I just want to ask you about what your favorite subject you like to teach?
I teach modern Middle East history, which I love, even for undergraduate students. But my most favorite course is really oral history, because in that course I give the students both the pragmatic, practical angle as well as the theoretical, ethical angle of doing oral history, because what people tell you from their heart is a treasure that you cannot misuse or mistreat.
Yeah.
And that's the message I give my students. They do interview in this course. I teach them a theoretical aspect, and I also teach them the practical aspect. And they go out to the community in Dearborn and interview people and learn how to do it with politeness, with ethics, knowing that this information is private and should not be discarded and misused.
And that's, they'll open up to you to tell you everything from their heart.
So that is a very important course. But I am at heart a teacher, so I love teaching anything. I teach Gulf history, and I love it because I know it so well and feel I have just produced a book on Gulf history, on the 2011 uprising and its impact on the Gulf. And as well as I have worked for, I have edited a major manuscript for the European Parliament on women, on Gulf women. And that has been published by the European Parliament.
And really, I just want to tell you, that's all what you have oral history collection, and what do you do with it?
Yeah, oral history, I have a major oral history collection, which I am at this moment putting it into a shape. It will be donated to an institute in Institute of Palestine Studies, where it will be open to everybody so that they can use this knowledge. It is well documented with approvals, written approvals of the people who have given us our memories, and it can be used, as well as another copy will be put at the American University in Beirut to be used by the people in the Middle East, because many of these interviews are in Arabic. The interviews cover many of the Palestinians in the refugee camps, whether in the Arab world or even dispersed overseas. So this collection will be a very important background And I personally would appreciate the younger generation to use it to write novels, to make films, to use
Oh
it.
wow! Even that
It's very important. Not that
inspire them.
I don't think I'm going to live to write many except some kind of formulation of what this collection is. But it will be open for the new generation to use it in order to write whatever the story impels them. Like, I mean, I had stories of people who were evacuated from Tel Zata. I have stories of people who were really dispersed from now the latest camps in Lebanon. There are very painful stories, but they are human stories of the suffering of a people. You know, we are like other peoples. We are not the only people who've had suffering. But because I am a Palestinian, my concern is focused. On the other hand, justice is for all. It's not only us.
Yeah, I'm glad that we have time. We have we finished 15
Yes.
minutes, few minutes
Yeah.
ago, and we can talk more about
Definitely.
more things. Yeah, and I just wanted
You
to
wanted to know particularly what kind of recognition for this I have had.
this is what I really want to know. I'm
Yeah.
glad that you reminded me.
Yeah, I've had quite a lot of recognitions. Fulbright has given me awards in order to go and do further work on the camps. I did most of my work in the refugee, in particularly in Israel, in the areas of where these villages have been destroyed, in Lebanon, where many of the people of the destroyed villages have gone, in Syria, and even if I
So
get...
you go to the places and interview on your own cost?
Yes, no, Fulbright has helped me.
Uh-huh.
Wayne State at some point helped me. Wayne State
I'm
gave me an award to work on women in the Gulf. This is where I have my collection. But it's very important to recognize that such awards are very significant for scholars. We cannot afford to do this on our own.
Sure, yeah. I'm
on
glad
our
they
own.
understand your case, your feelings.
Yeah, but
and they
it's
awarded
not-
you because you're intelligent, I believe, and you have to
But
write
no,
something.
Elaine, it's because I frame and cast all what I am writing in a proposal that's very academic. This is not something that's propagandist. It's very academic. We are, I'm a historian. I am very concerned about historicizing the experience and the narrative of the Palestinians who are dispersed, on women, on the downtrodden, on the societies that really have something to tell in their stories. And that's why, you know, you are supported by academic institutions.
Yeah, that's very important.
Yes.
Yeah, it's also because important places who are really look at your things and they support you.
Yeah, you know, I also did quite a lot of work with the Qatar Foundation, where we studied women in Qatar, but basically my interest is women in the Gulf as a whole.
What
because
made you interested in Qatar?
Because, not Qatar in particular, the whole Gulf. I lived in Bahrain. I have fantastic relationships with the people, particularly the women. And what is very important to know is that the women suffer from many issues that are common for women everywhere. But they have never been recorded, their story. And that's where I do feel that my commitment helps to bring this about, to really put it together. I have written quite a lot of articles on Gulf women. And, you know, people who are interested, who are listening to us, can look up my books under my name, you know, maysaikaly@gmail.com. You can, that is my email address, but under my full name, May Seikaly, on the internet, you can discover what I have published. I've published quite a lot on Gulf women because of my experience with that, because of my identity with the suffering that women as a whole, but
Yeah, you look at it the basic cause of our
it's
society.
justice. Again, it's justice
Yeah.
that I work for.
And I just want to ask you also, do you, you mentioned that you are from Haifa.
Yes.
And can you tell us something a little bit about Haifa? People
Right.
don't know where Haifa is. And
Haifa is what is known in Arabic literature as the bride of the coast
Wow.
of the Mediterranean. It's a beautiful town, very similar to Beirut, but different than the Beirut that the mountain is very close to the sea.
oh, mountain
Beautiful.
and a sea. Wow.
Carmel, Mount Carmel is directly overlooks
It's very famous Mount Carmel.
and a beautiful town with fantastic, the whole story in my book was that this town is really a new town. It is only from the 1700s that was created, became a very important town. And when the British occupied it in 1917-18,
is it 1917? Okay.
First World War, they really created, of course, the Mandate period with the Balfour Declaration that came with it. But they had great hopes for Haifa in particular. This was really a coastal city with the possibility of trade from Lebanon down to the south to, in the Mediterranean. And they created a port, and there is a very important 1933.
Is it the port of Acre?
No, it's Haifa. Acre was up. In fact, when Haifa came, it supplanted, it weakened the role of Acre. But Haifa, Jaffa, and Acre are the three very important ports. And Haifa became the exporting port in Palestine. Also, it became the connector of the railways that went down to the extreme south of the country. So it became a network of trading systems.
I remember Acre when Napoleon Bonaparte, he couldn't get to Acre, and he threw his hat on the wall that his hat went there.
Well, I don't know that story, but I know that Bonaparte failed in Al-Jazzar, was able to really defeat him. And in fact, his army really got the plague, and many of them are buried in Haifa, in Mount Carmel. There are huge, areas where they are buried.
Any ideas, any thoughtful you can advise our community?
Well, at this moment when the whole Arab world is in such terrible shambles.
I agree, it's so painful.
It's very painful, but I really feel that unless we open up to understand the problems that we've had, the reasons why we've reached this terrible state, we cannot go on further. And I think the community has to keep together, has to really stand up against all issues of bias, of Islamophobia that are really rampant now that we feel it. And that's why I feel very strongly with my students, with my community, and I believe that unless we all stand together with all, honest people, not only Middle Easterners, all honest people, our community, our American community is filled with them. And unless we stand together, we have to overcome this difficult period in our treatment of the Middle Eastern and refugee communities that we have. Because as you know, we have many refugees coming to us here.
Sure,
from Syria, from Iraq, and many of my students come from this background.
Right.
And, but I advise my students to really study, learn, find the good examples of formulating yourself, developing your knowledge, because you will serve your community by serving the broader community.
Exactly.
By being part of the American community, you serve your community. This
The
is
community
my advice.
really is very really have good heart, but they involve in their life and they don't know anything about what's going on
That's
the other
why
world.
I personally would insist on education. That's what we do. Wayne State is an excellent place where many of our community, 50% of my students, 40 to 50% of my students are of Arab origin, and I have among them many Americans who really
I'm glad.
appreciate our culture and appreciate studying the language as well as to study.
What motivated you to collect oral history about the Palestinians?
Basically, you have to understand my background. I'm a Palestinian, and I lived the experiment of the diasporic Palestinian. Initially, my earliest memories were of my parents being under duress, being in a very stressful condition.
I know.
I'm sure you as a parent knew what it was. Furthermore, the more I grew, the more I saw people around me. It was the whole story. It is not a youth with what our young people have. I remember that it was refugee camps, and I remember my parents who were themselves strongly influenced. My mother in particular had lots and lots of sympathy to what was going on and did teach us that we have to identify with the downtrodden. So basically, this is the seed that started from youth.
Exactly.
And when I got educated, I was in boarding schools, and then I went to college.
And we have only
Yeah.
and tell us,
So basically, this motivated me in order to do oral history. As I told you before, I discovered that oral history expresses the story of the silenced, those whose stories are not told, and the Palestinians are that, and similarly are women. And therefore, I use oral history as the tool in order to really seek and find the true issues for both the Palestinian people as well as women.
Thank you, Dr. Seikaly. I am glad that you accepted my to talk about oral history and about Palestine, and about. I just really want to tell you, you are really a giver. You give to your students. You give to your community. You give to justice.
Thank you very much.
And this is really.
But you know, I don't want to give myself all the accolades. I am a teacher. I love teaching.
As a teacher and as a person who have a heart full of love for others.
Thank you.
And thank you, CTN, for the opportunity to have this program. And thank you. I want to thank the audience who listened to us, for listening to us. And thank you again, Dr. Seikaly. I really,
Elaine, that was a pleasure.
I
Thanks.
am really happy that you are with us today.
Thank you.